right, welcome everyone. Um, Today we would continue with the CSS list, which we started last week, and we'll also be looking at how to style backgrounds using the CSS style as well, and also understanding the box model and its components. I will share my screen for us to begin. Now, I have previously created a template for this class. I have here on my project folder my CSS file in my CSS folder, and I also have images which we'll be using to illustrate how to set backgrounds with images on our pages. And also I have a page folder for my pages, but today we will not be using any example for pages. And I also have another folder for my scripts, which as we progress, we'll be having scripts subsequently. Now, on my index file, I have created a template for the class lesson, for this live lesson. And here I already created a style for my heading, and I will just give you a little breakthrough of what I did here, so you don't get confused. But you don't have to worry yourself much about the styling. As you progress in the class, you get to see these as very basic. But for now, if you don't understand it too well, just focus on the lesson for today, and as you progress, you will get to understand more, because we'll be touching every topic here as we progress. All right, I have, which is School of Programming and Software Development. So this is my heading using the H1 elements, and inside I have creatively styled each words to have different colors. So here I started with the normal text, which is School of, and then inside I spanned the style. So this span element enables me to set the style to the area particularly which I want it to display. So I've set the color for the programming. So as you can see, it's inside the programming text is inside the span element, which I have set a style for. So I want the programming word to have the color of the light blue color here, using the hexadecimal color code. So if you progress, you see I also have other words styled just the same way. I'm going to move forward so you see. I also have the and word and so on for the others. Now this is how you can creatively use inline styles in your elements, especially in the body elements. All right. So today we'll be focusing on the list styles and the background properties for our elements, and also the understanding the box model. So first, I am going to create a list here we'll be using to illustrate the styles. So previously, we have talked about the different type of lists, and if you recall, we talked about the ordered lists and also the unordered lists. So today, I won't be taking much of our time installing the different lists. So I'm going to use an unordered list to illustrate the styles. Right, now I have set, I'm going to make sure this displays inward. I will create my list using the li tag elements. We'll call this item 1. And this item 2. The third one for item 3. Okay. Now I have created a list here, and if I save this, you can see this. Okay. And if I refresh now, we can see that we have our list with the default markers. Now I am going to illustrate how we can change the markers, style the list markers using default markers from the style properties, or we can also use image as well. Now I'm going to set my list style here. Now the property we are going to apply it to the UL tag, which is the list we want to style. So I'm going to start with the UL. Now I'm using the embedded style here, so we can see everything on one page for easy access. So I have created a style here too as well for the heading, which is the H1, and the styles here are simple. So what we have here is the weight of the fonts has been set to bold. So we do that using the font property called font weight, and I have set it to bold to display bolder, and then I have set the text to align at the center of the page using the text align property. And also the font here I'm using is the Roboto font serif, and I've also imported I've imported fonts from Google using the import statement here, and this is going to import fonts directly from the Google website. This is the address here, and this is one way you can use to import fonts, and you also import other things like frameworks from other websites. We use addresses like this. Now, different ways to do this, but there are different areas of the page where we apply these imports, and different elements we use to do that as well. Now, you don't have to worry about understanding it for now. I also have here the font property for the size of the H1, that's the text, and I'm using 3em, which is also another unit of measurements we use in HTML. And I also set the color, and this color is for the general heading, but it's only for the parts of the text that has no inline style, which is cool off, because the inline style overrides every other style that you apply when it's being applied inline. And also I have here a text shadow which displays just behind the text. I'll explain this. I think the next in your next topics will be going deeper into text shadows and understanding how they are applied. But here you can see that I have set the shadow to display from the right side. The 2px is going to give the amount of space that it will show. So this is coming from the right, the bottom, and this is the intensity of the shadow, and this is for the color. So this is just a shorthand to style text shadows. Right, so for the style, first we want to set the marker, to change the marker, and previously we've learned that to change the markers for lists we use the list style type. In the last lesson we we tried different markers. I think we used circle and we used square as well, but for this, we will not be focusing much on this. So I'm going to set this on none, since we will not be using any of the markers from here. I will show you now how we are going to use images as our markers. So to use an image as your marker, first you need to have a small size image so it doesn't display bigger than the text. So you have to make sure the image you want to use for your marker, the size is relatively small to the text. Now to apply the image to a marker, we use the list style image. And here we're going to give the URL, which is the address to where our image is located on our file. Now I have my image in the images folder. Okay. And inside this parenthesis, first you are going to have a pair of quotes. And inside the quotes is where you specify the address where you can locate your image. Now I have my image in the images folder. And in the image folder, I want to use the marker image that I have previously saved. And it's marker.png. I'm going to save this and see the image. Now this, I'm going to zoom in so you see how this really looks like. So it's a little icon that I've used as my marker. The text is quite small. I apologize for that. So I've set the image to be relatively small already to display the same size as the text, so it doesn't appear bigger. Now, well, we also have other properties we can use to style our list. We have the list style position. I'm just going to pick from here. And I want the marker to be displayed. Assuming I have a header, this would have been clear to understand. Now you can set this to make sure that the markers are displayed close to the margin or out a bit further out of the margin. So this, if I set it outside, it's going to remain where it is. But if I set it inside, and it's going to shift a bit closer inside, especially to the text. So I'm going to use outside for this. Now you won't see much difference, but this is one way. If you're starting your list and you find out that the list is displaying too much from the margin, too close to the margin, you can use this to easily style it, to position it on the particular area you want, as if you want it inside or outside. All right, so next we're going to look at backgrounds, how to apply backgrounds to our elements. So first here, I am going to apply a background to the body of this page. And I'm going to do this on the body elements. And to do that, we use the CSS property called background image. And also the URL for us to locate our image. I have a background image on my images folder. So just like we did for the list, you also reference your images the same way. And the name of my background image is background.png. I have placed this here. So I also will come back to this, but I would also talk more on the containers that we're going to be creating first. Now, this is the way to set a background for the body, and your image sometimes may not be responsive. Now, this image is quite big, and currently now it's not displaying the whole image which I want the way I want the image to display. So to fix that, I'm going to use further background properties to position it. First of all, I want the background position to be centered. And then I want it to be the cover. Using the property, the background size, I want it to be the cover of the page. So now we have the whole image displaying. Now there's also another issue we're having here. The image is not as it's not, the image height is not the same as the page. So what it does is it's trying to replicate the image at the remaining parts of the screen of my page that the image isn't extended to. So that's why we have a little cut here. So to do that, we use the property background repeat, and I will set that to no repeat. So it's the amount of size the image actually contains that will be displayed. Now I have the right size of the image displaying on the page properly. So to illustrate further on the background properties, we'll be doing that on containers using the div tag elements. So here I'm going to create a div tag for our elements. Now divs are often used to structure HTML contents. You can use a div to structure your elements. You can use it to structure just maybe text content. So whatever it's in the div container can be easily displayed or styled without affecting other areas of the page. Now here I want to create a container that will hold the rest of the boxes, the box containers we are going to create on this page. And I am going to give a class to this div so I can easily style the contents inside. And I'll give this name to be container. Alright, now inside this container, but if I refresh the page, you won't see the container because it has not yet been styled, or I've not yet written any codes in it or given it any content yet to display. So I'm going to give the content here. So I'm going to be creating more containers inside this div, which I have given a class named container. And these containers we'll be using to illustrate further how to set backgrounds in containers and the box model. Right, so here I'm going to have another container using the div tag, and also I'll be giving it a class so I can easily style it individually, and the class here would be box1. So you can give your containers whichever name you're pleased with, as long as it makes sense to you, understanding your code and knowing what the container was meant for. So I gave it box1, and I'm going to create another container here, and I'll call this box2. Okay, first, so I'm going to use this box1 container to illustrate how to set backgrounds. So first, since we don't have any content inside the div, which is the containers, we are going to set a borderline so we can see the container properly on the page. Now for box 1, I am going to apply styles now that will display properly. So since I have created a class called box1 on the div element, now I can use my class here to style the div itself. So the class, using the dot sign to indicate a class, I would write the name of my class, which is box1. Now, in this box, I want to set a border so we can to make the container visible on the page. And we have different border properties, but I am going to just create a border line here first. Then I'll explain on the box model for how to style the border properties properly. So I want a line of 2px. I want it to be solid, and I want the color to be black. Okay, now you see there's something indicating that there's a line here, there's something here, but because I have not set the width and the height of this container, which I'm going to do to make sure the container is displayed properly. I'm going to set the width to be 100 px, not too big, and square. And then the height to be 200 px. I just want a perfect square. Now we have a perfect square. And in this container, I'm going to show how we can apply background to our container. So previously, we just applied a background to the whole body elements, but here we just want the image or the background to be displayed inside the container we have created. So to do that, we can apply backgrounds using the same property, background. Okay, now let's use the color first for the background. So let's use background color, and the color we indicate here is the color that will be displayed inside the container. So let's use yellow. Right, and if I refresh this now, we can see the yellow color inside our first container. Now, let's use an image for the background. So to do that, I am going to take out this and use background image instead, and use the URL to locate our image. Now, I have an image here, which is container.png. And we can find the image in the images folder called container. I'm going to save this, and the image here is actually the image of an empty box. So since we don't have anything in the box, I'm going to give the context inside and call it empty box. So you can I didn't use the p elements when writing a text here. So just so you don't get confused, you can always have text content in our div And if you want to have the P elements inside, it's still up to you. So you can use the P elements as well. But I'm doing this without the P elements, and I want to give this an inline style for the text so it displays properly in the box the way I want. So I'm going to use an inline style and align the text using the text align property. I want the text to be displayed at the center of the container. So let's see how this displays. All right. So if I had not add the inline style to the text, the text would have displayed from the right, which is the default for the text display on HTML. Now we have an empty box with a background of an image, and we are going to have another container to illustrate how to style the box model with its components, how to understand how the components work together. Now for the box model is made up of margin, paddings, width. So the box model is basically a container here, but in the container we are going to illustrate how the components can be used to style a container. Now first, for the box model, we have created a class called box2, which we'll be using to style this container. Now first, just like we did for the box one, we want to give it a visible border so we can see how the container is being styled as we apply the styles to it. So here, first we're going to have the border. Now the border itself has different styles. As you can see here, I have border radius, border top, border bottom. So if I want to set the border to have a specific style, I'm going to use the border style property. And for the border style property, we are going to specify how the border itself is going to be displayed. So for example, we have a square here on the box one. We have a border that has a perfect square. So if we want, this is the style here we have is just a solid border with the width of the border as 2px. Now if we want to style each side of this border, that's when we use the border style property. So we can specify that we want the left or the right side of this border to be styled, and then we apply the property that follows. Well, I want to just show you the shorthand property, which I have done here already. I just used the 2px width for the border, and I wanted the border to be solid. Now we have other type. We have okay, I'm going to show you. We have dotted, we have dashed, double, groove, hidden, and so on. So I could set it to any of these, or I could leave it at none. Or if I leave at none, we won't be able to see the boundaries of the border or the container itself. So I'm going to use dashed for this second border. Now, without the color, we will not be able to see it's styled properly, so it might just give us the default color. But I want to set the border color itself to have a unique color, and here we'll go with red. So let's see how this displays on our page. Now, just like the other one too, we have the container being displayed, but the width and the height is not properly displayed. So we're also going to set the width of this container to be 200 px. And the height as well to be 200 px. So we're going to work into a perfect square. Now this is displaying below the box 1, and you can see it has the border style as dashed instead of the solid which we have used for the first one. Now this is one way to style your border, but I would recommend that you learn the shorthand, which makes things easier. But if you have specific areas of your border which you want to creatively style, so this is also another way we can do that by listing the properties one by one. So if you want the style of the top of the border to be dashed, you use the border style, the top style. Then you use for right, you use the border style. For left, use the border style. For right, for the sides. So I'm going to put all this using the shorthand, and I won't be needing the extra. So to do that, we use just the property called border, and in the border property, we can set the width of the border itself. So the unit here I'm giving is going to be the same, 2px. Okay, let's make this a bit bigger. So use 5px. And then also the border style, I want the border style to be solid as well. And the color should be black. So this is the shorthand way to style for the border. Now you can see the width of the border now is bigger than the one which we have used here as 2px, because we set as the second box to be 5px. So understanding the box model, we have to look at padding. Paddings are properties we use in CSS to give space around a particular content in an element. So if we have a content, let's use our list for example. So I'm going to copy this list. And put in our box 2, so you can understand how this works. So what I have done, I have moved the list items into the second box. So we are going to start with the padding. So we see how to give spaces between our content and the border or the container itself. Now to do that, we use the property called padding. Now we can as well, just like the border, we can as well style the padding we can decide the side of the content we want the padding to apply to. So if we want more spaces on the left or on the right or at the top, we can specify that using the properties here for padding left, padding right, padding top and bottom. Now if you don't want to go through this long process by specifying them individually, you can as well just use a shorthand for the sides with just padding. And now if you still want to style each side for the padding, let's say we want more space at the top. So the first unit we usually have here is for the top. So this works in the clockwise direction. So it always starts from the top. So the first unit we have here will be the space we're going to have for the top. So let's give it 5px, right? And then now the next is the right. Since it works clockwise, if we give another unit here, so if we're using just one, this is going to apply to every side of the contents. Let's try this and see. So I use just one first, 5px, and okay, sorry, this is not going to apply to. Okay, so I've used just one 5px. Now this is going to make sure that the sides, so even if it's not equal, because I've not set the content to display at the middle, but what we have here is that we have 5px space around here, we have a 5px space around here, and also a 5px space. Now because the content was not set to display at the middle, so you can't really tell from here, but the padding which we have set here has made sure that if we throw in another content in this container, it's still going to have a 5px space between the content, the content and the boundaries of this container. So let's see if we have 2 units here, which is for the right, going clockwise. So I would set this for the right, and it will be 5px. So this means that I am giving a space for the top and for the right. Now you still can't tell now because of the extra space which we have here, but if we had a smaller container, then you'll be able to see that we have a 5px space between the top and the right of this content. And if you also have, if you want to give more space, a specific space to the bottom, then you can add another unit to it, which is going to give us, this will be the space between the content and the bottom margin of the border. All right, so I'm going to leave this as 5px all around, and then we're going to move on to margin. Now the margin, unlike the padding, which is for the which is the space between the content and the border inside the container itself, so the content inside the container, the padding will give us the space between the content inside the container and the border itself of the container. But for margin would give us the space around the container. So if we want the space around this container to have specific amounts of space, we can set it to have margin left, margin right, margin top, and margin bottom. So if we want the space between the top container, that which is the empty box, and the one we have created, we can use the margin top and give it a space of 10px. Now this gave us a space of 10px between the top box and the one at the bottom. So the margin was applied to the box 2, which is this box, and it has given a space, because we applied the 10px to the margin top, it has given a space to the top. Now if we also do this to margin right, it will give us a space from the right, give us a space from the left. So as just like the padding, we can also use a shorthand for the margin as well. So we can specify in the margin which of the sides we want a particular amount of space to be given. So if I use 10 here, this would make the spaces around this container. So let me try something bigger. So let's say I use 20px. Now this will give us the space of 20px around the container itself. But if I specify that I want only just the top and the right, just like the padding, we can as well have just the top and the right. So let's say for the right we have 10px as well. So this is this 10px is for the first 10px here we have is for the top and bottom, and then the second 10px here is for left and right. So if I add an extra 10px, it's going to eliminate one side because it will be for just 3 sides. So I'm going to give another 10px here. So this will apply to just 3 sides of the container itself. But we're just going to leave this at 1 since we'll be needing extras. And we'll just use 5px for our margin. Okay, now the box model components basically consist of these properties, and these properties helps us to style our containers in a well-structured format. So like we can see here now that the text is not displayed from the border of the container itself. So you can see that it's well positioned away from the border itself. So it looks more structured. Now we use the box model for this. Now we also can calculate the box model width and the height. And to do that, we'll be adding the width of the container to every property that has to do with the width of this container. So which is, for example, here we have, first of all, we have, let me put this in comments. First of all, we have the width here, which is 200px. So if we want to know the total width of this container, we start with the width, which is 200, plus for the padding. The padding here, we have 5px for all sides, and we have specified that the width for the padding for all sides, which is 5px, is applied to including the left and right side of the container. So which means on the right side we have 5px padding, and on the left side we have 5px padding, on the right we also have 5px padding as well. So if we want to get the total width of the container, we have to add both paddings for the left and right. So we have 5px for the left plus the 5px for the right. And also we have to take notice of the margin as well. Since the margin has been applied to all sides, which means the left and the right also has 5px as well. So they make up the full width of the container, including the one we have for the border as well. So as you can see here, we have the border has been given as 5px as well. So the border width is also included in the width of the container. So since we gave the 5px for all sides, which means our left and right is 5 plus 5 as well. So this will be border left plus border for right, which is 5. So same thing with the margin as well, as I was explaining, which is 5 for left and 5 for right. Now what we have here is we have the width, which we gave as 200. So the total width we gave here is 200, and then the width for the padding for left and right is 5px each. So that's why we have 5 plus 5, and then we also have the width for the margin, which is 5px on the left and on the right. So we have another 5 plus 5 for both sides, making up the total width of the margin. And then for the border, we have 5 px on both sides. For left and right, we added the 5 for left, the 5 for right. So it makes up the total width of the border as well. So combining the properties, the border, the width, the height, the padding, and the margin, gives us the total width area of this container itself. Now this applies to the height. So if you want to calculate the height of the container, we also focus on the height, the properties that were applied to the height, that makes up the height of the container itself, which here will also be 5 px because we didn't specify for each side. So we have 5 px being applied to all sides. So this applies to the height of the container as well. Now, these are not the only properties we can add to our containers. We can as well make our container stand out using the outline property. So this is just going to give us a different touch from the other container. And to style using the outline, we use the outline property. We can use the outline property, outline style, but I'm just going to use the shorthand here to give us a quick view of it. So here, just like the border, we're going to use 2px and want it to be dashed so you can see the difference, and the color should be red. Now let's see how the outline looks on the page. Now as you can see the outline is not really much like the border, but it makes it stand out and it looks completely different from the other border, even if the colors were same black. So this is for the box model. Now to make this page look presentable, because right now we have our containers in a block style, so we can as well make our containers to display side by side if we want. And to do that, we are going to style the parent container I have created here, which holds the 2 boxes. And the class we have given for this is the container. So I'm going to write the style, the class here. Now, to be able to display the contents in this parent container side by side, we use the property called display. Now, just like we did too for the hyperlink last week, how to make sure our links were displayed inline or in block format. But here I want to use the flex display. So we've seen how in block works. Blocks is usually the default, and then we'll see how the inline works. But here I want to use the flex property so you can see how this is displayed. Now this is going to help us have the contents in the container displaying side by side, but this is not good looking because they are not positioned well. So to do that further, we can use the justify content property. So this is going to set the content to the I can use the center, which would display the contents in the middle of the container, but what I want here is an even space between the containers itself. So I use this value, space around, sorry, space, I'm going to do that again so you see. Okay, so I use space between to give an even space between the containers. So I'm going to apply this to the page so you see how this is going to display. Now you can see that the containers are displayed side by side with an even space between them. Now we can also apply more styles to this to make sure that the items are displayed in the right area of the container. So I'm going to use the align items property for that, and I want the content to be centered in the container. Now you see both of them. Now one, just because we added more to the width of the border, that's why it's looking a bit bigger, but they're both on equal level now, horizontally on the same side by side on the page. And as well, we can also add a margin to make sure that it's closer and there's space around them. So I'm just going to give 10px. So this will apply the space around all the containers itself. All right, so it looks better. Now, this is one way to do this. There are also other ways we can use to display containers side by side. There are different properties, so you can explore yourself to find out the ones that works best for you. But this is one way that we can do this. All right, so is there any questions? Because I see our time is fast spent.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, I think one of my questions is on what you just said now. So let me ask a question on that. Like in trying to display this container to be equal, what if one uses margin right to shift the other container with the same with the width, because we are meant to make these two have an equal space, which is the same with the width of the container.
Yes, that is going to work as well. So you're going to set the margin left, right? Just like we illustrated here, how we see the margin can be applied side by side. So if the width, for example, what you're saying is if the width is 200, right? Then we're going to set a margin left of 200 px, right? That's what you mean?
No, I meant margin right.
Okay, margin right. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so that way you want to make sure that the property is being set inside one of the boxes. That's the style for one of the boxes. To set the margin right to be the amount of units that we have for the width of the container, right?
Okay. Now, what I'm talking about is setting that margin right. I'm trying to use it to kind of give space between the two containers. Do you understand?
Yeah, it's going to give. Yes, it's going to give a space between the containers, and it's the amount of space you give that will be applied between the containers.
Okay.
Yes.
And then my next question is on these images. Sorry, I was on my way when you mentioned that area. I was coming back from work, so I didn't get those areas. But my question is, because I tried downloading images. To use, to be able to use my image as a line marker.
Okay.
But the images I downloaded are too big, so I was trying to research and see how I can reduce those images. They were way bigger. So I tried using width, but it wasn't really giving me what I wanted. Rather, it was reducing the text.
Okay.
So I don't know. Can you just throw light on me?
All right. So I mentioned earlier, since you were here, I mentioned that the image itself has to be resized. If you are going to use an image as a marker, right, you have to resize the image before using it. That way it makes it easier for you to apply to as a marker. Now the image I used here, which is a marker, the image was already resized before I moved it to this folder, my images folder. Now there are different means you can use to resize your images. There are different software, different applications. There are even online platforms you can use to. I usually use Google sometimes, so I just checked Google for image resize. So you'll be given different varieties of the websites that have been built for that purpose. So you can resize the image to the size which you are sure would display. Now I resize this to 10 by 10. So that makes it the resolution way smaller than the usual size of the original size of the image itself. So as you can see, if I had a bigger image here, the marker here will be displaying bigger than the text. Do you understand? So what I did was I resized the image and moved it to my folder, so I don't have to do that inside the styling. So the marker
you can also style it there, but I was trying to do it. It didn't give me what I wanted.
Oh, okay. So the best solution you can do is to resize the image. When you resize the image and apply it to the marker, you see it will no longer look big. So you have to make sure the image is quite small.
Right.
But for the background,
thank
you don't have to resize the image. You can do that with the CSS. So it depends on the image itself as well, though. There are some images that are landscape, and for example, now this container is a square, right? It's a perfect square. And let's say this image I used in this container is the landscape image. It's going to give me a problem as well. So when you're uploading images on your page, you have to make sure the container which you want it to display on is the exact size of the image, which is what's the same error I have here on the body of the web page. So this image I have is a landscape image. That's why it's not displaying at the bottom of this page, as you can see. So when you want to upload your image, you have to try and check the image first. Now I can style this image to display at the full length, but it's not going to look well. It's not going to look well. The best thing you can do is make it easier for you by resizing the image. So if you can resize your image to be a portrait, then it would be looking big enough for the whole page. But if you have a landscape image and you want to apply it to a space for square, then you will not have a full image displayed. It's going to give you a tough time trying to style it, and the image at the end of the day might not look good anymore. So it's best to always resize the image for the particular area which you want to apply it to. As the class progresses, you see other ways we can use to style when we upload images using the image tag. You can see how we'll readjust the size of the images to fit in properly. Okay. But always make sure you have the right size of the image before using it. Else it's going to give you some tough time trying to fit it in.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Is there any more questions? You can ask on the chat if you don't want to speak out. But if there isn't any more question, or you can raise your hand and then ask on the chat. Okay, so in absence of questions, always remember you can reach out to me from the WhatsApp group for a one-on-one. All right, so I'll see you guys next week. I wish you success in your assignments. So if you have any challenges, please feel free to ask on the WhatsApp group as well concerning your submissions and any other question you might have. Or reach out directly to Ms. Mildred or Ms. Pascalina, which are the admins on the WhatsApp group. Right, so we're going to end the class here. We'll see everyone tomorrow, next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.